going live now. I don't trust any of this. You're live, it says.
It says, yeah. We shall see.
Yeah, well, I don't even know whether anybody can hear you.
I don't know. I haven't seen anyone show up yet, so I'm guessing that, it's in the usual, who knows what kind of delays.
Well, it claims there are 3 people here.
Could easily be.
Or 3 waiting or something.
Sound check, video check. Can anyone hear or see anything? What's happening now? Okay.
Muscle Up says 3 thumbs up.
Okay, so that indicates things are going okay. So, Muscle Up, you mean video and sound is all good, right? We're not going to have the ability to zoom in on the...
Yeah, we're not going to have the ability to do anything right now, but I need to know what...
Can anyone give us like a verbal description of what's going on? You want to get your phone and look at it there?
Well, supposedly there's 4 people here. All is good for him here in Gulf South, according to Muscle Up.
Gulf South? You're in the southeast over there? I can't read any.
Gulf South? You're in the southeast over there?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Douglas is here. Hi, Kodak. Kodak's here too.
Okay. That seems to be coming through okay there. Is that Chris?
No, I don't see Chris yet.
Okay. That.
Kodak and Muscle Up.
Okay. So anyhow, hopefully it's functioning.
And Muscle Up is in Mississippi, I believe. MS is Mississippi.
Yeah, that'd be Mississippi.
Yeah, David. Everything is fucked up tonight. I have no idea why.
Yeah. So. The electrons are revolting. What's new? But anyhow, so I say the impact.
Jean-Francois is here.
Hey, Jean-Francois. The plans of the mill,
formerly Colorado, he says,
seem to be doing okay. Yeah, Brian Smith sent me a thing.
David, I definitely blame China for many things.
Yeah. But first I got to get the Central America mine profitable first, and that is proving to be kind of annoying in terms of, it's kind of cool to be able to sit there and, do a Zoom meeting and stuff and see what he's doing. But trying to get anything down there is a real pain.
Kodak says he's got an idea to question making artificial gold. Did a search that said it costs over $5,000. Seems to be heading there. What are we calling artificial gold?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm sure you could make gold from lead. It would probably be
talking
radioactive.
Synthesized gold. I don't think you can synthesize it at any reasonable price. Nucleosynthesis is really expensive. But anyhow, let's say I can't see the chat from over here. Do you want me to sit in that thing and turn the camera that way so I can see the chat, little one?
Yeah, I will take off and you can turn the camera however you want and sit here.
Yeah, because I say it's just things messing up so
Jean-Francois says he's got tungsten if you want to make artificial gold, around 50,000 tons of it. There. There's your...
I'm getting a lot of light from above.
Yeah, well, that doesn't look any better.
That doesn't seem to help a whole heck of a lot. You want to turn that far light on? That's better. That's not bad. It's not great. Say that far light there might do a better illumination.
Is that better?
Not much difference, but it doesn't hurt anything. Okay. So anyhow, so the whole, yeah, I'm looking. Let's move this camera so it's looking more at me than past me. It's still, I think, but anyhow. So they've been waiting over a week now for a piece of 100 mesh screen. I think it might have gotten to Miami on Friday. Then it had to be shipped to Central America. It might show up somewhere where they can use it by Wednesday. In other words, they can get to it. And so it'll probably be another week before they get that sheet of 100 mesh screen to put on the output of the ball mill. And that probably going to be a pretty important change. There's they found that by retabling their number one concentrates, they got a much cleaner concentrate, and they had the significant gold line showing up and everything. So there's definite improvements. One thing that they wanted to try this week, which is not an unreasonable thing, is to they had taken a vacuum hose and sucked off the gold line from the table, and judging by what he was panning there, it's, double-digit percentages gold, maybe 50% gold by weight, because it's a lot denser than the sulfides. But they wanted to try roasting the gold line cons and then smelting it down. Sounds plausible to me. Unfortunately, they can't find any anhydrous borax. There's some, apparently they can get soda ash, although we may be talking washing soda instead of soda ash. Either one of which, when you put it in a crucible and heat it up, it's going to tend to boil over. I mean, that's why I use anhydrous borax and soda ash, is because that water of crystallization, when you start heating it up, gets pretty rigid. Yeah, but even then, wage slave, that borax likes to really foam up too. So you have to be careful about that, or you mess your oven up. And so again, one thing after another becomes complicated, which is kind of annoying, but that's what you got to deal with. I haven't heard any results yet as to how well that experiment worked, if they have completed it yet. But same with if you take baking soda and heat it in the oven, you get soda ash.
Yeah.
Sodium
But it
bicarbonate.
takes a while, and it does it. Yeah.
Sodium bicarbonate.
Yeah.
Huh.
But it takes a while, and it causes a mess.
Yeah. So anyhow, let's say they're things
I wanted to do it, and you completely shut down the entire idea because you said that it was stupid and counterproductive, and it wasn't going to work right.
Well, we had washing soda, You know, if we're going to bake something, might as well bake washing soda. But anyhow, so that's in process, so to speak. They have identified an assay lab down there, and it has about a 2-week return time, but that's better than something else. And so it's just one thing after another, trying to work out all the kinks. But we're working them out one at a time. And Dan came by this week with a Vasella kiln. He picked up 2 of them on an estate sale, and he only needed one, so he brought the lower, the one that was in worse condition to us, which is fine with us, because the fire brick needs some work. Not sure about the elements, but you know, it's something where we can definitely put it back into operation a lot cheaper than buying a new one. So it's sitting out there at Lauren's right now, and I want to thank Dan for that. Appreciate it. Let's see what else on the list. We've got the mill out at the ranch up and running now. We haven't started processing ore. We got a bunch of crushed ore waiting to be run through the mill. That's about when it was quitting time today, but everything seems to be functional and ready to go now. There was a horrendous mess left by some kind of quadruped. I presume it was a furry quadruped in the lab that took Eva hours to get cleaned up. I don't know. She suspects it was a raccoon, both because of the mess it made and the footprint it left in one spot. But, you know, it just...
No, I've never
it
known
was a
pack
mess.
rats to be that
Destructive.
aggressively destructive.
Yeah, just stuff. I mean, I'm talking little stuff. I'm talking significantly sized stuff, knocked over, thrown around, drug hither and thither. And so it's just, you know, was a real mess. Cool. Let us know how it works, Brian. So anyhow, we're pretty much ready to go. It'll be Wednesday before we get out there again. And I'm starting to load up the minor Bago with the standard supply loads and everything, so we can get out in the field. Hopefully this weekend we'll be out in the field checking monuments and stuff on the claims in the general area of Montana B, and making sure everything's still copacetic there. And we'll just, and that might be silver. Do you have any silver, Brian? That would precipitate out black, I would think.
Precipitate out of what?
Leach solution with zinc. Eco Gold X, I presume. And so, let's say hopefully we'll get in the field. Physiologically, I seem to be doing fine. Last week, I don't know, I think it was Friday, I was out there slinging buckets of ore, crushing them up, and was doing pretty good. No problem. Hey, Chain. So we've been having technical difficulties, so we're back to the old system right now. Anyhow, the say we should be back in the field. I don't think we're going to be going back into Montana B right quick. We'll just be checking all the claim stakes and monuments and stuff. Part of the reason is the generator that we were using in years past has finally kind of given up the ghost. And I don't know how much one of those rascals costs now, but I imagine it's in the $400 range. And the only reason we needed it was at Montana B. So we'll probably put that on pause for right now. We did find a significant amount of gold. Let me write this down. Let's see. At the North Adit dump sample we took last year. I mean, we were out there at the mill today. We were going through some of the samples we took at various locations last year that we hadn't got around to yet. And North Adit dump showed significant gold. I don't know. It wasn't super duper rich appearing, but it's kind of hard to tell with hard rock. What size genset in watts? I think it's 3,600 watts max, 3,000 steady. It's a Champion. One thing you have to worry about with these gensets is that you'll see a genset that says 3,000 watts, and it's like, okay, fine, that'll do what I need. I only need, 2,000. But the problem is a lot of these actually have two 1,500 watt circuits. You got two separate circuits with a 15 amp plug on them. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, I'm pulling, more like 16 amps on one circuit. So it simply didn't work. So we have to be very careful. I've used these Champion gen sets in the past. They don't last forever, but they're inexpensive. They're light enough to pick up and set in a trailer and such. And they last reasonably well. I mean, it'll last a year or two. So it's not bad for, I think last price was like $3,500. Not 3,500, $350. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But anyhow, so the next place would be to go up to top of the hill, and we're waiting on some feedback from the Forest Service. If they don't send us any feedback, that means that they don't care. We gave them a notice of intent, and if they don't say anything, then it's like, presumptively approved. So we shall have to see what we shall see on that. And hopefully by next week, we will be up there on top of the hill again. We got to run up there. That'd be a good thing to do this weekend, is see if we can get permission to cross that patented claim there.
Yep.
There's some.
Well, this weekend we were planning to go to the Montana B area and do our claims maintenance so we can get it out of the way.
Yep. Yeah. Finally, we're getting to the point where we got lots of stuff to do. So we shall see what we shall see.
I mean, that's important to.
Oh yeah, there's lots of things to do here. Yep. And let's say we just need to drive up. If we were just driving the van, which is what we do to do that, what is it, about an hour from here?
Yeah, probably.
To the bottom of the pass, and see if there's anyone we can talk to. We've tried investigating the land ownership, and the owner of record, judging by a number of things, is likely dead. And maybe in probate or something like that. But there are people that were living there before. And therefore, it's not an unreasonable assumption that we can just drive up there, park, and knock on the door and ask some questions. And we shall see what happens there. There's certain areas at top of the hill that look pretty substantial, but are hard to access from where we've been doing it. Yeah, the Champion has a 30 amp capacity. It's actually got a 30 amp 110 outlet on it. So that's the nice thing about the Champion, is it does have that extra power, and so it works well, and it's cheap. As I say, it's one of those things that, you know, if we need one, we'll get one. Let's see, look important, huh? Yeah, it could be Jean-Francois. I say I know that the Champion has the high amperage 110 volt outlet on it, and the the standard 3-prong outlet I can plug my Hilti into without a problem. As I recall, if we used the Hilti and the winch, we had a problem, right?
I believe so.
I believe so. And another thing about Montana Bee right now is that we're kind of at the limit of that winch, you know. I'm not sure, Hot Mix. My guess is that it has the same characteristics as it would with a cyanide leach. A lot of the, okay, maybe 120 volts Kodak, I don't know. When I was a kid, it was 100, they called it 110, okay? But the Eco Gold X, at least a lot of its chemistry appears to be cyanide complexing. There's a certain dissociation with the ferrocyanide that's in it, which is low toxicity, but it dissociates into some cyanide ions, and those are what is actually attacking the gold, it seems like. There may also be some thio in there, but I'm not sure. There were some indications that we had in the past. I forget exactly where, but it's almost like there's two different chemistries going along in parallel, and in the Eco Gold X. And so that's, you know, we never were able to figure it out in detail. No big deal. You know, if it works, it works. We're loading cartridges now out at the ranch. We're pumping the pregnant pond through cartridges to get Barron's solution to operate with. That's kind of a slow process. We're probably going to, when we go back there on Wednesday, just hook up a pump direct and pump from the top of the pregnant pond directly into the tank to get enough solution to start processing ore. But, and say, we shall see what we shall see. I do not know, Hot Mix. The resin we have been using, the Max Water 104133, did okay. Was not stellar. The highest loading factor we ever got was maybe 3%. Okay. Now we should be able to load about 10%, but if you're loading a lot of other ions like iron and stuff like this, then you could definitely, max out the resin without maxing out the amount of gold in theory. Brandon sent me some information from Purolite. They make resins and stuff, and they've got a Puragold something or other resin that is supposed to be a lot more selective. And yeah, I'm not sure, Hot Mix, whether or not the carbon sucks up a lot of copper or not, but the Puragold, what it's specifically designed to do in theory is to selectively recover gold and silver in solutions that have a lot of other stuff in them. So that might work better. So you might contact Purolite and ask them, kind of give them a rundown on what your situation is, and they might be able to help you. Another thing that the information from Purolite indicated, and it may work well for us, is that we should be stripping our resin in a much more dilute acid thiourea solution first in order to get rid of the other crud, and then go after the gold, is what they said. I need to start talking to Purolite on this. Again, I got juggling a whole bunch of balls in the air right now. But say resin has some advantages compared to carbon. Carbon has some advantages compared to resin. One thing that I liked was on the article that they had, on basically using resins in leaching solutions. It specifically said that in some situations carbon was better, and in other situations resin was better. And it had a table of which one does better with which characteristics, and I thought that was very nice. Generally, your marketing people are going to say we're better every way you can imagine, which generally isn't true. I prefer honesty. But let me get a drink here. So I was favorably impressed with that. And I'll need to review that some more. But I would check with Purolite, Purolite, and see what you can find out there for your application. By the way, Hot Mix, what is the concentration of gold in your leach solution? Do you have any idea? Because that, it can make a big difference. I'm thinking that with the guys in Central America, if they're roasting their sulfide cons and getting a high grade oxide con at that point, then they may very well have sufficient gold, if they leach it, to where you could directly electrowin it relatively efficiently. Okay. I'm not sure what the best way to increase conductivity would be, but I'm sure you could just add sodium hydroxide and add conductivity. That's another possibility, Brian. I had thought of that too. That's confidential at this time, Kodak. Okay. But yeah, salt was a possibility. Yeah, we just do some testing. It's pretty easy to set up a small scale test. I also found on the internet a manufacturer, I forget the name. They make little, um, I think they call them drums, but I mean, they vary from like 1.5 gallons up to about 15 gallons. They're cylindrical with screw caps. And it's like, that'd be perfect for like a bottle roll for concentrates. Okay. The current estimates are that by retabling the concentrates, we should be able to come up with a sulfide concentrate, a good quality sulfide concentrate that could then be roasted and leached, and produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 pounds a day of concentrates. And it's not Costa Rica. But like everything in Central America, everything's close to everything else there. But you could theoretically roast it, pulverize it, bottle roll it, then extract your leached liquor from the pulp and run it through a direct electrowinning. That's my evil first order thought. The sounds hot and dangerous. Well, it can be hot and humid, that's for sure. In terms of dangerous, they don't seem to indicate much danger from societal stuff. You know, you might have snakes and spiders and things like that. But they didn't seem to have a lot of concerns about law and order. I don't think the cartels are really down in Central America that much. I think they're mainly up in Mexico, where they're getting all the money from the United States. You know, there might be certain areas in Central America where there's significant cartel presence, but the money isn't in Central America. The money's in the United States, and that's where they are. It's just south of the border here. But anyhow, that's kind of the rough iteration. Process the ordinance, and we're just waiting on a whole bunch of information. If we could just get some lab results, it would be really nice. We don't know what the ore grade is. We don't know what the tailings grade is. We don't know where the gold is going. I mean, all indications are there is a huge amount of gold that is not showing up in the concentrates. Okay? That appears to be the case. There's lots of possibilities at this point. It could be going with it could be superfine gold that floats off the table and winds up in the tailings. Okay? Montana B would do that. If you tried to do this process with Montana B, all your gold would be out there in the tailings pond. Okay? However, the tailings themselves, we've gotten 2 results back that are substantially different. Okay. Let's see. Basically, they vary by about a factor of 5. So that's where, you know, we really don't know. I have a suspicion that a lot of the gold is in the ball mill or the sand screw. You know, that's just not a good way to run a gravity separation, is to have devices which will just tend to collect gold via gravity. It's too small to float, wage slave. In order to get the particles of interest, sulfides, gold, whatever, to float, it has to penetrate the surface tension of the bubbles. And Montana B, the particles are so small, they will not do that very well. They dissolve like a son of a gun. which is why we were originally just going straight leaching with Montana B. Because, I mean, according to Montana Tech, their electron microscope study said that 80% of the gold was passing 6.8 microns, which is about a quarter of the size of talcum powder. So yeah, it's not gonna settle. It's not gonna float worth a darn. It's not gonna amalgamate, but it will leach just fine. That's why we went to the Eco Gold X leaching circuit, is because it's like, okay, why fight, reality? Let the rock tell you what it wants to do, not the other way around. Top of the hill, on the other hand, we seem to be getting substantially over 50% recovery just in a simple high efficiency sluice. Could you send me that link to my email, Honey Bunny? I'd appreciate it. So, I say, depending upon where it stays suspended and settles with time. Montana B, it does settle with time in a day or two, literally. It takes that long. And so what we need to find out first is where is it? First of all, how much gold is there in the center? That will do some. Actually, it's more like a high G bowl would be the best thing there. But even then, that kind of fine gold, it just dissolve it. Why fight it? It's so small it'll dissolve very quickly. Why fight reality? But we need to find out in Central America how much gold is there and where is it going. Once you throw that ore into the process stream, where is all the gold going? Without knowing where is it going, we don't know how to recover it. If it's getting in the ball mill, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to clean out the ball mill. We're assuming that a lot of it is winding up in the spiral classifier and just getting recycled until it beats it to death. So they're replacing the spiral classifier with an actual physical screen. And let's say again, it'd be nice if you get a sheet of 100 mesh screen down there in anything less than 3 weeks, but it's not that easy. When it's a salt fade, how much of it is actually track in the water still? I'm not sure what you're asking, Sarah. Is that a translation program you're using? It seems quite confusing to me. So I'm not sure what you're actually asking. If you can ask it again more clearly, I'll be happy to try and answer. Sulfide. When it's sulfide, okay, salt fade, yeah, sulfide, yeah, voice to text. It's impossible to tell in general. You'd have to actually run a few tests to find out. Sulfides can have very little gold or enormous amounts of gold in them. And it will all depend upon that particular ore. Okay. I think you mean iron sulfide. You're talking like iron pyrite, Sarah? There's not a simple rule. If you had, say, a chalcopyrite, you know how much copper is in it because it's a major part of that mineral. But if you got gold, the gold is not directly related to how much sulfides there. I can understand that, Sarah. What you need to do is find out how much gold is in the sulfides. And for that, if you take and make a concentrate of the sulfides, panning or whatever, and then send those sulfides off to a good lab, thank you, Jean-Francois. As a general rule, chain, correct. But anyhow, so Sarah, you need to find out how much gold is in them. And so you have to, I say, make a concentrate and then analyze that to get a good idea. I have seen concentrates anywhere from 1 or 2 ounces to the ton, which would be, like 50 parts per million, up to thousands of parts per million. Okay. It's hard to tell. They can be quite a lot in there, though. Okay, 47 ounces per ton in the sulfides. That would be pretty good. Now, the gold in the sulfide is going to be pretty difficult for anything to get to. The sulfides need to be broken down. The usual way they do that is they roast them at a high temperature, around 1,000, 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and oxygen from the air will react with it. The sulfur will burn off, and the iron sulfide becomes iron oxide, which is much more porous. It's softer, it's more porous. It's a lot easier to get the gold out of that. When you are roasting sulfides, you are inevitably making sulfur dioxide gas, which when you inhale it, reacts with the water in your lungs to form sulfuric acid. Obviously, a very undesirable thing. Therefore, you need to roast it in a way that the fumes go in a safe direction and there's nobody downwind to be affected. Also, when you are roasting sulfides, it's very common to have other elements in there too, like arsenic, mercury, things like that are really dangerous in the smoke. So you have to be very careful roasting sulfides. However, that's generally what you would do to make the gold available. And then there's some relatively safe chemistry you can use to get that out of there. Does Chapman Gold refining flux work for that? I don't really trust Chapman flux to oxidize your sulfides well. Not if you're running a sulfide concentrate. If you got a little bit of sulfides in rock, maybe. But a sulfide concentrate, there's a lot of sulfur there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would definitely roast it first. But if you roast the sulfide cons, you could then theoretically leach it. You might just be able to regrind it and then do a good gravity separation. It depends. I say it's not unusual to get over, well, let's see, 1,000 parts per million would be what? 3. I don't have my calculator here. What would that be? 1,000 divided by 30 is what? Okay, so about 30 ounces per ton. Yeah, 47 ounces per ton. Is that I presume the 47 ounces per ton is in the sulfide concentrates, not the rock itself, Sarah? If it's the rock itself, that's extraordinarily good. If it's the sulfide concentrates, that's good, but it's not extraordinary. Okay. So I'm unclear as to what that 47 ounces per ton refers to. Is that the rock itself, or is that the concentrate you make from the rock? Yeah, crushing rock by hand sucks, Shane. Yes, leaching is doable on a small scale. Again, to give you better advice, I need to know, is that 47 ounces per ton in the rock or the concentrates? If it's the concentrates themselves, then we're actually looking at a similar situation down there in Central America, where we'll probably set up a large scale bottle roll that will leach. You know, once we oxidize the concentrates, once we roast them, then we'll probably leach in a bottle roll. That's pretty easy to do. There's some free mill. As a general rule, if you've got any significant amount of free mill, recover that first. It's just that much less you have to deal with some other way. You know. Yeah, they tend to be chain. That's one of the problems with them. They're really annoying. Well, I'm not familiar with the Parks process, wage slave, but if you wind up with your precious metals in the lead, then you still got another refining process after that. I presume electro refining. But I'll say this. Yeah, it works, Sarah. As I say, I'm still not clear if that 47 ounces per ton is your head ore or the concentrate, Sarah. But are you familiar with what a bottle roll is? It's essentially like a rock tumbler, but usually the chamber would be, you just take a wide mouth jar that's watertight and put it on a series of rollers like that, throw it on there and let it go. I've got some videos showing me with bottle rolls, and that would work fine. If you're talking 40, well, either way, whether it's 47 ounces per ton head ore or the concentrates, either way, you could go with a low toxicity leaching system, and there's varieties of chemistry. One thing I'm looking at, Honey Bunny, on the one in Central America, is possibly going to an acid thiourea leach, because I know I can directly electroplate out of that, you know, and it's low toxicity. I mean, fertilizer and diluted battery acid, it's not too bad. Until you know exactly what's going on, Sarah, save everything. Don't throw anything away. That's the rock. Okay, if you got 47 ounces per ton in the rock, that's an extraordinary grade. Okay, I would verify that using a couple different methods if I could before investing a lot of money in it. But if your actual rock is 47 ounces per ton, then theoretically your sulfide concentrate would be substantially more than that. And so if you were to pulverize the rock, make a gravity concentrate, and then take those sulfide concentrates, first of all, I'd go ahead and see if you could gravity concentrate free gold also. Okay. There's a variety of methods that'll work on that. But if you can, recover both the gold and the sulfide concentrates into a fairly clean con, and then recover your free gold you can out of that, then roast the concentrates and
Hope it's not arsenopyrite.
use a leach, then you'd be probably in good shape.
I mean, that would be bad.
Do you have my email, Muscle Up? If you want to email me, I'll check with, Honey Bunny can just let me know whether it's okay to send you her contact information. Yes, the sulfides settle just like black sands. Okay. Let me type it in here. Where's the at sign? At. Let me make sure I got that right. Okay. There's my email. So is it okay, Honey Bunny? I presume that's a yes, that I can send him your contact information. Cool, Muscle Up. Okay, so just send me a note, Muscle Up, and I will give you Honey Bunny's email address. But yeah, Sarah, let's say this exact problem we're dealing with down there in Central America. Why would that be bad? What in specific are you talking about, Sarah? I've kind of lost my track. Not that I'm thinking about. Somebody wanted Honey Bunny's stuff. Do you throw away magnetics or process them with the sulfides? It depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to get free gold and you're sure the magnetics do not have any significant gold, throw them away. Anytime you can get rid of something that doesn't have gold, the better. On the other hand, like Brian Smith here, almost all of his gold is with the magnetics. So you would say you have to test. There's no rule of thumb that's reliable. And if you have magnetics and sulfides and you're going to roast and leach, yeah, just put it in with them. Some of your magnetics may be, in my case, most of my magnetics appear to be tramp iron from the grinding process. It's basically steel. So my magnetics are basically, just set to the side. In the long run, we'll test them and such, but for now, they're just being saved. And we'll go ahead and worry about that when we have enough to worry about. But I'm going to be doing some research on basically an acid thiourea bottle roll, specifically for high value concentrates, and then go to direct electroplating from that solution. Okay, because I know that I can plate from an acid thiourea solution. That's what I do in my stripping circuit. So assuming that I can recover it that way reasonably, let's say we'll figure out what's going on and tune it in from there. But that's my thought. Thiourea is a fertilizer, dilute battery acid. Yeah, pretty low hazard sort of stuff. In the case of our stripping circuit, it's running at slightly elevated temperatures. What is it, 60 degrees centigrade, little one?
Yeah, 60 C is where we usually run.
I think that's something like 135, 140 Fahrenheit. How would you know if there was like bronze in there? Well, actually, bronze is pretty easy to differentiate from gold. Just add nitric acid. The gold will sit there and laugh at you. The bronze, brass, or anything like that will just start fizzing like crazy and dissolving quickly. You do find brass in nature from uh, cartridges, firearms cartridges. I had that happen to me one time where this guy brought me a sample. We ran it through the impact mill, and bronze is made from copper and tin, Sarah.
Yeah.
I can remember that one compared to brass because tin has been around a long time, and we had something called a Bronze Age. So that's it. Brass, on the other hand, is made with copper and zinc was a fairly recent thing because in some cases you can do something like that, Chain. But as I say, she was specifically talking about bronze, and I'm not sure why. She might have meant brass. Bronzes are, thing. Have you ever tried ammonium thiosulfate with copper sulfate for leaching? I have not tried it. Okay. It does work. It is preferable if you have a lot of carbon in your ore. The thiosulfate doesn't stick to carbon very well. If you have a lot of carbon in your ore, the thiosulfate doesn't stick to carbon very well. So therefore, you'd use a resin to recover that. But there's at least one mine in Nevada, a big mine, where they were using thiosulfate for their carbonaceous ores. So, as I say, that's one of those dealios where, like so much else, it's all ore dependent. The rock, the form of the gold, the distribution of the gold, and everything, all that decides what you have to do. There's lots and lots and lots of different techniques that can be applied to the problem, but some make a lot more sense than others. Just like if I wanted to drive to Butte, there's multiple routes I can take. One makes a lot of sense. Some of the others make very little sense at all because they're way out of the way, but they'll get me there. Okay. And so depending upon what your situation is, for example, if I wanted to go to Whitehall from here in my van, I'm going to go that way. If I wanted to go to Whitehall from here, pulling my big giant cargo trailer, I'm going to go that way because that's flat. Okay. Presumptively, Jean-Francois, you're going to be containing all your cyanides, your leach solutions, just like you would cyanide solutions, among other things. It's got gold in it. It's got expensive chemicals in it. You really don't want to lose it. And that's the copper sulfate, I believe, in a thiosulfate solution acts as a catalyst. Okay, it's not a reagent per se, it's a catalyst, or shall I say a consumable. But yeah, you've got various chemistries that will dissolve gold under various conditions. If I'm not mistaken, the thiosulfate solution is that a basic solution too? I kind of think the thiosulfate is basic, whereas the thiourea is acidic. But I could be wrong. I wouldn't bet any money on that at all. But I'm also not sure what the kinetics are. In other words, how fast do things dissolve? 30,000 tons of tungsten oxide, proven reserves. And 50,000 tons forecast reserves in other side. I don't know if that qualifies as a whole lot. I really don't know, Jean-Francois. Rock's not here tonight. Metallic thiosulfates are very close to neutral pH. Okay. Again, these are the sort of things that sometimes, for example, if you had gold in a limestone matrix, you wouldn't want to use an acid thiourea solution because it'd take forever to neutralize it. On the other hand, with a cyanide solution, the limestone's good to help, keep any acids out of the way. You need very little pH adjustment. This is what we mean, Sarah, in terms of it all depends. There's no just one answer fits all. That's one of the big problems people run into in extractive metallurgy is they get told by somebody, this is how you do it. And it's like, okay, you left out the second part of that sentence, with this ore. So if their ore doesn't happen to match that, it could be a complete and utter catastrophe. So, that's one of the reasons that, we have 3 words here: test, test, test. Always check out, make sure everything works, find out what you're dealing with. This is the problem with that Central American project, is they haven't done enough testing to know really what's going on at all. And so that's part of what we're trying to do. It could be, Jean-Francois. I really don't know. And I don't know what a good grade for, that would be scheelite, wouldn't it? Tungsten oxide, that would be scheelite. So I don't know what a good grade is or anything like that. Just not familiar.
That's a honey bunny question. Nobody else around here does tungsten.
No, I say John and she are kind of talking there. But so that's wolframite, yeah. That's what makes it so much. It does make it more interesting, Sarah. Yeah, it's not just plug and play sort of thing. So that's where these complications come in. But I am theoretically going to be working on a very similar problem, Sarah, except the ore grade's not nearly as high as what you're reporting. By the way, that 47 ounces per ton, how was that reported? Who did the analysis that came up with that, etc.? Okay. Various labs and such are much more reliable than others. And some people will deliberately lie in order to get you to send them more samples. So I'm just curious, what level of confidence can you ascribe that 47 ounces per ton with? Statistically, it's extremely unlikely to have ore that high grade.
Yeah, it could be a hot spot.
It's not unknown at all. It's not impossible. But it's extremely unlikely on a purely statistical basis. You don't run into that very often. So that's why I'm wondering why, not why, but what level of confidence, who came up with that number and how did they come up with it? It could be nugget effect. It could be fraud. It could be just somebody saying, oh man, that little rock right there is great. Let's take that little rock I can see, visible gold in and have it assayed, and that creates, a feeling of, wow, there's some really rich stuff here. And it's like, no, that little rock was really rich, but that's not a representative sample. So, it could be, it's unlikely to be purely from cross-contamination because that would be extraordinarily high. Where would you get that? Your great granddad had it done 40 years ago. Do you have any idea what the sample consisted of, Sarah? Was it a particular, like I say, was this somewhere you just took, wow, that looks really, really good? Or do you say, here's my vein, I'm going to take a channel across it and then crush it and split it down and stuff like that? Do you have any idea
Get it verified by several labs.
how the sample was obtained? It makes a huge difference as to how much reliability you can do. If you had an assay of 47 ounces per ton, I would say it's definitely worth checking out. Abso-freaking-lutely. But it needs to be verified. And so this is why I'm asking, is because I'm trying to help. I need to understand more so I can help you understand better what your situation may or may not be. Okay, Sarah, but now how did he obtain that sample? Was it that good looking rock in the dump, or is there a vein? You know, what is the structure that you're looking at potentially mining? Again, you need to obtain representative samples and have them run to see what you've got. It's not terribly expensive to do, and it's definitely something you need to do before you go investing any money. It was an operational mine. Okay. Is it a vein? You know, and I presume anything that high grade will generally be a vein. Do you have access to what's known as the working face at this time, or is like the opening collapsed? Is it down a shaft that you can't get down easily? What is your particular situation in order to try and verify what happened? Yeah, I believe that, Sarah. Are any of them easy to reopen? When you say covered up, sometimes they put grates, sometimes they just bury it. Okay, it's a vein. Did they, pour a foam plug in there and then just smooth it all over with dirt? What kind of closure did they put on the mine? And are there still dumps laying there, waste dumps where rock was mined and then thrown away because it was low grade? I'll say that, and trying to understand better what your particular situation is so that we can assist you to the best of our ability. That too, honey, man. That's why I'm asking about dumps. And say if she can access dump material now. Unfortunately, the BLM may have spread all that stuff around too. Well, Sarah, this is technical terminology here. When you say tailings, in the mining industry, tailings is the ground up rock from which the valuable mineral has been taken. Waste dumps are the rock that was mined and thrown away in order to get to the good rock. So are you talking about waste dumps or tailings? They put grates on it? Okay, well, grates are fine. assuming that you have the mineral rights to that, then they have to give you the keys. Say those grates should not be completely welded shut. They should have an access in there. Okay. And so there should be like a hatch or something with a padlock on it in general. But do you have the mineral rights to this mine? Have you staked it? Is it a patented claim where it's actually private property? What is the situation with the land status? It's very important at this point. Ooh, that could be pretty cool in and of itself, Sarah. Again, if the land is government land, then you have to have a valid claim on it. Okay. On the other hand, if well, let's say this is what I'm saying. If you've got a valid claim, they may have to allow you to put a hatch in there. But you have to have valid mineral rights to it to even discuss it with them. Okay, so if they've got hatches, or well, you said both, but I'm not sure if that is tailings or if you're talking about hatches on the grates. You take care, Jean-Francois. When you're doing comments, Sarah, it helps to give too much information and to index. Indeed. That sounds like voice to text. That sounds like a voice to text complication sort of thing there. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it does crazy stuff, Sarah. But so we're looking about for clarification on tailings or dumps, waste dumps. And it's family owned. Okay, so it's on private property. It's known what's known as a patented claim. It's private property, and I believe, and I'm not absolutely certain, but I pretty believe if it's on private property and they've graded it off, you can just go in there and do it. See, so if it's BLM, then that's government land. But you could probably, you need to talk to your local guy. And if you mentioned what state this is in, I didn't catch it. But that can make a big difference. Yes, it's mine. It's BLM. Well, it's either BLM or it's yours. You know? Because if she said California, okay, honey bunny. If it's a patented claim, I think it's pretty likely you can go to the BLM and say, hey, I want access to my mine. And if they don't say, okay, we'll put you a hatch in there, you can say, well, I'll just put a damn hatch in it myself and provide the proper notification. And it's just like, tough. This is my property. You can't mess with it. I didn't give you permission to put a grate there. And I want access to my mine. You'll have to research it carefully. Now, on the other hand, if it's BLM, if the U.S. government owns the land and you just own the mineral rights, then you got to be more polite. And just say, I need to get to my, inside my mind to do some sampling and testing. And I'm not sure exactly what the rules are on that. The fact that it's in California makes it more difficult. The regulators in California are are not necessarily terribly cooperative. Up here in Montana, it's a different situation. But you need to get some samples. If you got dumps, take some samples off of the dumps and send them to a lab to have them crushed, split, and assayed. Well, she's not being real clear, Kodak. She says BLM and mine, but I know BLM closed it off, Sarah, but who owns it? Who has title to the land? The tax assessor's office says who owns the land, not the mineral rights, the land itself. They're two separate things. Okay. You can own the mineral rights and not the land. You can own the land, but not the mineral rights. Believe it or not, it happens. And so you have to identify that. I mean, are you filing paperwork and paying fees to the BLM? If so, then that's BLM land, and you've got, you are obtaining the mineral rights through claiming. And if you own the land, you need to make sure you own the mineral rights too. Somebody could have sold the mineral rights in the past. But let's say, if you're unsure, you need to research that. Okay? If you own the land, there will be a title to it somewhere. Okay? If it is BLM land that has been claimed with a valid mineral claim, and make sure it's valid, then they have to deal within the law in terms of how they restrict your access to it. It also matters, for example, is this in a wilderness area or a monument or anything like that? So I'll say there's potential complications here. And you need to get samples. The fact that he said it was 47 ounces per ton is very, very interesting. Okay? But it is not definitive. And he might have said something, for example, like, yeah, I've got ore out of there that runs 47 ounces to the ton. And that might have been one time. He might be talking about the best stuff he got. But the phrasing was such that it's easy to interpret it as that's what it all runs. Yeah, you need to find out a lot of things before you start spending money, Sarah. Now, that's a real interesting piece of data there. It definitely needs some follow-up. Absolutely. You need to find out who owns the property. Is it? Yes, it is, James. But who owns the property? Who owns the mineral rights? What needs to be done to open it up for sampling? You can take samples. If there's any dumps still there, you can sample the dumps. Hey, James. And send them off to a lab for analysis. It might be that it was really, really high-grade stuff and they were throwing away anything less than an ounce to the ton. You may have a big pile of ore sitting on the surface. Believe me, it happens. Okay, it does happen. In this area here, way back in the mid-1800s, they had to send their ore to England to have it processed. It had to be hauled by wagons a couple hundred miles, thrown in riverboats taken down to the Gulf of Mexico, thrown in ships, hauled all the way across an ocean and processed. You can be sure they only sent the best stuff, okay? Which means everything else was just piled outside. You know, as they had got more and more infrastructure here, of course, that changed. But let's say you have to check what's in the dumps. You have to get access to the underground. Now, sometimes when you've got these grates around the openings, can you see the vein at the opening? You know, where the grate is, you may very well be able to say, yeah, there's the vein right there, and get a sample from that. Okay. And so, you know, you might be able to get a sample without getting through the grates. Now, it's not going to be a definitive sample, but it's a sample. You know, and you just have to properly assess the value of that particular piece of data. You know, I took that sample from right there, and this is what it did. Okay, you know, if that goes half an ounce to the ton, it's like, well, yeah, that indicates that there's possibly something there, and I need to spend some more effort on this. The dumps, if you take some dump samples, you know, and, you know, trench, crush and split, and it comes out 1/4 of an ounce to the ton, it's like, you know, how big are the dumps? You know, these are important questions. If this was an old operating mine, there might be substantial dumps there. You might have hundreds of tons of material sitting there. Probably doesn't grade that high, but it can grade over an ounce to the ton. If you got a couple of 100 tons of 1 ounce to the ton material, hey, you know, I know where I'm going to get started. Plus, it also gives you some bulk samples that you can work, you know, you can process and stuff and make sure the proposed method of extracting the gold from the rock actually works. Okay. So there's a lot of different situations there where you have to, right now you're in an information gathering state right now. And I'd say you have definitely an interesting possibility that needs more research. Okay. But you don't have a sure thing by any stretch of the imagination at this point. Okay. If you want to communicate via email to ask questions and stuff, I presume you saw my email address there. If not, on any of my videos in the intro, it has my email. This communications through here where I'm talking and you're typing later and stuff, it doesn't lend itself ideally to good information transfer and conversation. So it can get confused. So email might be a more reliable method to help you out. As long as I'm not doing anything else significant, I'm perfectly happy to help people out, you know. But it sounds like you're enthusiastic, you got a good possibility, but you're not well educated and informed on the subject. And it's a lot more complicated than they make it look on Gold Rush. Okay. There's a lot of detail, especially with hard rock mining. Hard rock mining is an order of magnitude more complicated than placer gold mining. Okay, there's a lot more variables that you have to deal with. Yes, I do. Where did I put it? I used to have a sheet of paper here where I'd just hold it up. But yeah, it's just a second here, Sarah. Where? Oops, don't hit that. I don't know if you're going to be able to read this. Not too bad. There you go. Lawrence Hiddle is the assayer I use most. He's quick and he's reasonably low cost. In your case, you want to talk to him first because you're probably going to want to send some uncrushed samples, and he's definitely going to charge you more for that to crush them up and stuff. But he gets results back in about a week, and if you've already got it pulverized and you send him a modest amount, like less than a pound, it's $35 an assay. Okay. So Lawrence has been pretty reliable. We've double checked him against other assayers from time to time. And I would say he may not be as good as they get, but he's pretty good. Okay. He's pretty reliable. And that's one. There's also one, Chris Christopherson it's near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I forget. I think it's Smelterville, Idaho. He's good too. Costs a little bit more, takes a little more time, but he's also reliable. He's the one I usually use for a double check. And there's various big companies that do assaying that are pretty good, but your hassle factor is high and your return time is a pain in the butt. You know, it can take a long time to get a sample because they're dealing with big companies that do it by the thousands. Okay. And say I've been kind of annoyed with ALS Global with this bid with the Central America project because they dropped the ball twice. You know, twice the guys paid for a rush, and then it just got sidetracked somewhere or whatever, and so we didn't get the rush samples, and it's a pain. I mean, there's stuff that was sent to ALS probably a week before I sent my stuff to Lawrence. I've got the results from Lawrence. It's probably going to be another week or two before we get our stuff back from ALS. Pain in the ass. Okay. Say I like Lawrence. He's easy to deal with. He'll talk with you, no problem. But I think it would be good to to email me, because I feel that you're so inexperienced at this that the probability of you making a painful mistake is very, very high. And most of them can be avoided. Okay. So, as I say, I'd like to just kind of help you out a little bit on this one to make sure you're doing it right. And also, if you're not familiar with underground exploration, that can get kind of dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So again, I'd like to make sure you don't do something that you regret. It's very, very easy to do in this business. Luckily, the guys down in Central America, I think they've got good enough where we should be able to fix their mistakes. So I'm not terribly worried about that. But in most cases, yeah, it gets real painful, and sometimes, yeah, it's just the money's gone or whatever. You know, it's easy to make serious mistakes in this business. So that's one thing we like to do, is to help people so they avoid a lot of the pitfalls. Oh. Did your grandfather have any records that he kept while he was operating this mine? If he did, and you can find them, those could be very, very helpful also. Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree, John. The communication seems a little more kludgy than average. And there's been some that seem to be a voice to text type screw up more than a translator, but I agree. There seems to be some stuff in there. Well, as in my free time, you know, a little bit here or there, not a problem. We'll be happy to give you some advice and this and that. Yes, you appear to be, but that's okay. That we all start that way. Like myself, I started green gold mining, but I started working for a small gold mining company, which gave me she doesn't want to make expensive mistakes, Kodak. And that helped me a lot. I got a lot of the basic knowledge pretty quick. And because it was a small mine, I was involved in a lot of different things. In a big mine, you basically do one job, maybe two. But in a small mine, you do all the jobs. It's hard to say what happened with Chris. He's got some physical situations. He's got some internet situations. So quite often he doesn't hang around too long. We were having some electronic issues when we started, and that might have been it. I don't know. He's a good guy, very helpful when he can be, but his situation sometimes becomes kind of difficult to deal with, you know. Yes, Sarah, I know how families can be. It is sad, very, very sad, but that can be ridiculous at times. Okay. So do the best you can. There might also be records. I'm not sure what they have in California. I'm not sure what they have in your particular county. But like in Arizona, they have the Arizona Bureau of Mines and Mineral Resources, and they sometimes have data on these things where They had a mine inspector that was showing up every 12 months, just taking a look at stuff and making some notes and like that. So find out what you've got in the state and the county and see if there's some records of this mine. Okay. You might be able to get stuff like that. I remember there was one little mine down in Arizona I had for a while that was run by one guy, and the mine inspector would show up and he'd make notes as to what the guy was doing and like that. So it could come in really handy. You never know. Little one, do you want to do a tinfoil hat report?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm going to go to the restroom for a minute. So I understand. Oh. Yep. Had to take a break. Take care, John. Sarah, another question. Have you seen my playlist on how to find your own gold mine? So I'm not sure how you wound up here. So I don't know what you've seen or not seen. But I have a playlist. If you go to my YouTube channel main page, I think it's third down, there's like a few videos on top and then a video list, which goes hundreds long. And then below that is a playlist, how to find your own gold mine. And if you haven't seen that, it's specifically designed. I took videos from in the past and some in the not too distant past with the idea of someone who's got very little knowledge about the business can go through those videos and get a lot of information real quick. It's specifically targeted to inform the newbie, so to speak. Okay. So if you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend that, because as I say, that's what it's specifically designed to do, is to educate the novice in some of the important basics of the situation, so that it will allow you to, as I gain some knowledge really, really quickly. There's a lot of things in hard rock mining that are definitely not intuitively obvious. You know. So, as I say, that's what it's specifically designed to do. And if you haven't seen that, I would recommend that. Oh, so anyone else got any questions or situations or comments or anything like that at this time? Well, let me go while you're here, Muscle Up. I think that is you. Muscle Up, is that the one with some pictures like on a barbecue grill and stuff? I presume that's you. Let's see. Okay, Sarah. Good. Yeah, I remember your channel there. Muscle Up. Oh, goodness gracious. People always cause so much problems. Okay, what I'm going to do, Honey Bunny, is I'm just going to forward. Oh, excuse me. That's the wrong thing. No. Forget that. I didn't hit forward. I said reply to. Okay, I just sent that on to Honey Bunny. Muscle Up. Huh. That's cool. I've been to Colorado Springs more than once. Muscle Up. You're most welcome, Sarah. Again, we just hate to see people make mistakes that they don't have to, just because of ignorance. Anyhow, anyone else got a let's say any more subjects, questions, or anything like that at this point? Yeah, it's kind of funny how we got this small little community here. I'm guessing Rock's probably out in the field this week. I think he said he was doing like 2 on, 2 off or something like that.
Yeah, he did.
So if there's no other questions or subjects or whatever, I'll probably call it a day. We've been here almost 2 hours now. Thank you for showing up, Sarah. It added a lot there. It's usually helpful when somebody comes in asking some questions. Hey, Rock. Hey, Chris. You're welcome, Dee. Again, if you have any specific questions, whatever, that's what the live stream's all about. Or you can always just comment on a video. I'm pretty careful not to keep my video become too successful on the video. That way I can deal with people on an individual basis. Hey, Mr. Virtue, how'd the vacation go? No big news today. Oh, geez, Chris. What a pain in the butt. Sorry about that. Oh. Well, you don't want to be so busy you can't live. That's one of the things that I, even helped me learn was, I was working too hard and living too little. Oh, dearie. Well, I think I'll go ahead and call it a night. Yep. So, since I don't see anything else up there, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Do you want me to call you right now, Chris? Probably talk for 15, 20 minutes before I get tired. But thanks everybody for showing up. And say thank you for asking questions, Sarah. Okay. So go ahead and post. Oh, you already have. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. Your stream will stop immediately.